Hey everybody, welcome to Chicken Fried Growth. We're go-to-market AI in the Deep South Collide. I'm your host, David York, and I'm here with my co-host, Sara Mosley.
Hey, y'all.
And we are actually kicking off a special 5-part series this week talking about that we're calling the collision. And it's really getting kind of deeply into where humanity and technology are colliding. I would say that because of AI being on the scene, obviously we talk about AI pretty regularly on this show. AI being on the scene is kind of bringing all of these collisions, or we're having this collision that we're having with one another from a tech standpoint, and it's kind of bringing it to the forefront more than it ever has been, right?
Right.
So what I wanted to do is really kind of talk in depth about that. And we're going to stray from our normal format. So we're going to skip our normal kind of deep dive into Deep South goodness.
Right.
I know you may be disappointed if you came here looking for talking about soft serve ice cream or college football or something of that nature in the Deep South. But we're going to really focus in on this conversation around technology colliding with humanity, specifically how AI has disrupted things. So this first episode we're going to get into is really kind of laying the groundwork for this conversation and talking about the historical shifts and experiences that folks have had as it relates to technology, because AI coming on the scene is really not the first collision that humanity has had with new technologies or new way of doing things. It's just the latest, right? It's just the latest one.
Yeah.
And so what I wanted to do is really, Sara, you and I just discuss, hey, here's some of the things that have happened in the past from a technology standpoint that have really shifted the way people work, how we think about work, the way things get done, the way work gets done on a day-to-day basis. And so I've got 4 kind of topics to talk about with relationship to this. And the first one is we're going to go back into the 1800s and the early 1900s to get into this. So
The Industrial
we will,
Revolution.
yeah, exactly. This is where the first big shifts from a technological standpoint took place. And the largest one that had one of the biggest disruptions to work was when agriculture went from being fully done by human beings by hand into tractors and combines and all of those types of things, and the mechanization, I guess, if that's a word, of the agriculture. And so what ended up happening, which is pretty remarkable, and this is again something that we could all see as a parallel here, is in 1900 basically 40% of American workers worked on farms and did farm work. And then
Hard to think of, but okay.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a big number.
That's
2
huge.
out of every 5 people.
Yeah. We're farmers.
Yeah, worked on a farm in some capacity.
Okay.
In America. Fast forward 100 years to the turn of the century.
Right.
That number dropped from 40% to 2%.
Oh my gosh. Now, I just was saying, I could see that because, there was, I guess, a big pendulum swing where big corporations own most of the farms, but now you kind of see it swimming back where you have some of these small farms that are sort of doing little co-ops together to try and get their produce out there and things like that. So that's interesting. That's really, really interesting.
Well, and again, when we're thinking about AI, this is a really interesting parallel because, again, folks in the workforce today are thinking about all the displacement and obviously all the layoffs and the news and all those types of things, even though we know some of those layoffs are a little bit suspect around quote unquote AI,
right?
But there is still a big fear and impact to the workforce.
Yes.
And the type of work that people did. So what's fascinating, right, is again that 38% that basically left the farm and changed the type of work that they were doing.
Right.
Um, and so, this also was the starting point of what's called the Great Migration, when millions of Southerners were basically working on those farms. A lot of them were, black because of the end of slavery, and were still down there working. Migrated up
Sharecropping.
north to sharecropping, and migrated up north to find work.
Right.
And it changed the landscape of America to some degree with that. So that there's a big impact there, and that one is an interesting one around just work displacement, right? That we
Yes.
have experienced work displacement, historically speaking,
Right.
even in the US, and obviously we're talking AI as a worldwide, but
Right.
I'm sure that this, mechanized agriculture was a worldwide thing. So
Right.
people doing work in farms were being displaced around the globe, of course. So that's an interesting point, right? If we're thinking about the history of how technology is colliding with humanity and the work that we're doing. All right, let me jump into number 2 here, and we can talk about it. So the second kind of shift was around electrification. So think about, and this one's interesting because electricity basically hit factories in the late 1800s,
Right.
but there was not a impact to the productivity of the factories until about 30 years later, after the fact.
I think they were
So
afraid of it in the beginning because they thought that it was going to cause cancer and that it was putting off fumes and gases and crazy stuff. Like when it first came out, like people were afraid to electrify because they thought that, it was putting off something in the atmosphere.
yeah, and they had a central problem with the way they did work as
Yeah.
well, because every factory had one central steam engine that did all the work.
Right.
And so there was this kind of like, well, we have electricity. How do we actually get work done now versus then,
Right.
before electricity? So that was an impact too, because so folks were, and again, I'm trying to lay these out in a way that shows the impacts and the parallels
Yeah.
between the different things that we're all thinking here and
Sure.
now,
Yeah.
because there are these different connection points where we've had very similar types of collisions. So this one, what you had a 30-year gap between, hey, we have electricity, and then people going, how do we change the way work gets done to take advantage of that electricity?
This almost feels like the prompting era of AI. Like, we have this, but we don't know what to do with it. And so then, people are just kind of trying to school themselves on how to prompt better when they're not really thinking about the big picture of how can we actually use this to do something meaningful.
Yeah. Well, and you're not necessarily understanding, like when something new, when the new technology arrives on the scene,
Right.
there is a time frame where everyone's thinking has to shift, right? And
Oh yeah.
and it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. It's not instantaneous, and we're obviously used to things moving and shifting much faster than they were in the late
Yes.
1800s and early 1900s.
Right.
The pace of society and the speed of work is changed dramatically since then, but there is still kind of a narrative here, which is there's a lag between, hey, this new technology comes on the scene,
Right.
and then the effective use of that technology to scale and become more productive and all of those things is not instantaneous.
No. No.
There's this gap here, and that's what I find really interesting about this electrification kind of collision.
Right.
That it's not just the technology was there, but yet it still didn't make any impact for kind of a significant period of
Well,
time.
that's 30 years is a long time. I mean,
Well, yeah, it's like almost a generation, right? Like,
yeah, that's huge. That's huge. And I wonder if some of that was overcoming the fear of it. And if
yeah,
some of it was just, lack of infrastructure, lack of, and lack of imagination sometimes, because sometimes people are so put off by something, or so focused on one aspect of it, they can't pull back from it and be like, okay, let me think about this from a different perspective. Let me think about this in a new way.
yeah. Or what about just the reality of we don't even know what we don't know, kind of a
Yeah.
thing,
Yeah.
right? We don't know what this can do for us, how this can change it. Like,
Right.
okay, it's here, but it takes time for people to kind of wrap their brains around, which is again why I would say, if I were to parallel that to today, and I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves because this is really about laying the foundation, but I would say so many conversations I've had where people are just like, our heads are spinning
Yeah.
with all the AI stuff. And I feel like that's probably a parallel here, where it's like, we just don't know exactly what to do with this. We still need time to kind of get our arms around the capabilities and
Yes.
the opportunities and all the things that could be done,
Yeah.
much less how we then do it.
Right. I think it's giving yourself permission to dream. And I think a lot of people get out of the habit of doing that because they get so focused on, this is what I do, and I'm a professional in this aspect. And so therefore I'm lasered in on that, but you've got to pull back from it and think about how it can impact different aspects of what you do.
Yeah, and I think that's a good it's a good point. And I think too, thinking about electrification. So one of the things that was kind of the when things started to produce.
Mhm.
So that steam engine was the central kind of in driver of all the different machines that were in a factory that were working. They were all interconnected. They were all connected to that single engine.
Right.
And then what ended up happening was, when electricity came on the scene, of course, now we distributed the work. So that central steam engine turned into individual small engines that
Yes.
were running on electricity at each workstation, instead of all of them being tied in, right? So,
Yeah.
for example, if something happened to the steam engine when everything was interconnected to it, right, everything had to come to a screeching
Oh,
halt.
yeah.
Once you distribute that into all these engines based on where there's power, well, now there was a bunch of other things that took place. One of them would be, they could actually reorganize the factory floor, because it wasn't dependent upon everything having to connect to this one central piece of equipment.
Exactly. It also, if I'm not mistaken, I think this was also the advent of shift work, because electricity allowed you to have light at night, and therefore, the almighty dollar was in place. So it's like, let's
Of
work
course.
all the way
Yeah.
through the night, you know.
Yeah. They
And
had a morning shift, afternoon shift, even. Yeah,
it's when all of
exactly.
that began.
So again, I think that's another interesting parallel with where we're at currently, is the idea that, yeah, we've got this technology, but we're not fully taking advantage of it. And some of that has to do with just how work is organized today, how processes are run
Right.
today, how businesses, how how data flows through a business, right? So it's like,
Right.
we're not optimizing and maximizing what we could be doing, because we still have to kind of rethink work
Yeah.
at its core. So
Rethink how we think about work.
exactly, rethink how we rethink about how we
Exactly.
rethink about work. There's a lot of rethinking.
A lot of it.
All right, all right, third one here. This would be interesting. So, uh, the assembly line. This one, obviously, I think we're a little bit further forward from a time perspective, and one that I think more people are probably familiar with,
Mm,
when Ford Motor Company, basically Henry Ford invented the assembly line
Right.
to build cars, which
Hmm.
was completely revolutionary. But there's an interesting element here that I think we should hit on
Yes.
as it relates to this, our current collision. So when the assembly line was built, basically you had these craftsmen that were making cars, and it would be like, a car would be sitting there and being made by a single person, and
Hmm.
they'd be doing all the different work and all the different
Right.
tasks,
Yeah.
right, for this car. And then the assembly line obviously shifted that to where it's this moving line, and you have people sitting at the assembly line doing the same job over and
Mm.
over and over and over,
Oh my gosh. The advent of
right?
repetitive stress injuries.
Exactly. Carpal tunnel syndrome or whatever else
Yeah.
you. Yes. The other invention was repetitive stress injuries.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like the electricity created shift work,
Right.
the assembly line created repetitive stress injuries.
Thanks, ancestors.
So, but this was interesting as I was reading about this and kind of digging a little deeper.
Hmm.
The the rate of turnover at the Ford factories was 400%.
Ooh, oh my gosh, that's so bad.
That, I mean,
That's
he
like call the
cut,
board. We're getting rid of some C-level people right now. Bad.
right. It's bad, but it was because of the shift in work to
Yeah.
going from, I'm an individual who kind of looks at this as a craftsman type
Mhm.
of, job, versus I'm literally putting this one rivet on this one
Yeah.
car over and over. I'm installing
Ugh,
the chair or the
yeah.
steering wheel, right? Whatever. So that repetitive nature of work became a thing.
Sure.
And so what ended up happening is Henry Ford had to basically double minimum wage
Yeah.
in
Okay.
a single day. Basically, there was a single day where they're like, he came out and said, we will pay you $5 a day instead of 250 a day or
Right.
270 or whatever it was, because that's what they had to do to get people to stay.
Sure. Well, because it takes away your pride in your work, and you
Right.
essentially become a robot because you're just doing the same things over and over again. And you no longer have the pride of saying, I built this. Look at what I've built. You just can say, hey, I put that rivet in right there. And it's
Right.
not quite as, spectacular.
Yeah. You don't step back and look at everything that you've done from
Mm.
nothing to something. You look at what you
Right.
did 500 times that day.
Yeah.
The same thing, the same screw put in the same spot 500 times.
I think this is interesting because this can relate a lot to all the artists and the writers and stuff that have gone through all the shifts and layoffs and things like that, because where we see ourselves as master craftsmen working on something and really spending the time, and now people are just content for the most part. Some aren't. There's a lot of AI slop out there, but some are
Yep.
completely
Still.
content to have Chat GPT write everything for them. They're like, good
Right.
enough, off it goes. So yeah, I can see that, and I can see where it would be tough to, get somebody to come back to something when they're no longer putting their creativity into it.
Right. Yeah. Well, and this is a really interesting parallel around, to your point, work being, the word I would say is like hollowed out,
Yeah,
right? Like
because it's no longer meaningful.
yeah, the meaning of work being kind of hollowed out to
Yes. Yes.
some degree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So again, another interesting shift and collision and kind of point here.
Hmm.
So we go back, we're like, okay, well, work had to, like, people were completely like displaced from work with one
Right.
shift. The way that work actually got done and on the day to day had to be shifted, and there were delays in adoption of technology because of the way work was kind of already architected. And then there's the kind of hollowing out of certain types of work because of the technology.
Yeah.
And then of course we'll kind of wrap up with this fourth one, which is the personal computer.
Hey.
We're fast forwarding a little bit, right? But this is one where it's like, okay, this is where, and this, there's a few iterations of, the computer,
Yeah.
obviously, because larger mainframes and big computers, there's that scene in that movie Hidden Figures where they have all the calculators,
Yeah.
and by calculators they're like people
Right.
that are doing all of the math calculations that are sitting in a room, like they're literally calculators.
Yeah. Human
um and
calculators.
and then they bring in the computer and they're like, oh, we have this new thing that does all this, and they had to, like, the calculator people, I have to
Right.
reiterate that because none of us even,
Right.
you
Think
can,
of
like,
people.
you can't fathom thinking about a calculator as being a person. So
Right.
the human calculators had to go in and learn how the computer system worked to make sure that they were not, displaced by that, but became the experts in that new
And how to use it.
technology that
Right.
came on the scene,
Right.
right?
Smart
But
on their
but of
part.
course, yeah, and that's just the starting point of the computer side of things. But obviously, personal computing, that changed everybody's work dramatically, right? Like,
Yeah.
you now can do everything digitized. You don't have to keep a written ledger of your accounting
Yeah.
and kind of all of that stuff, right? And then it just, that is probably one that we can all get our arms around a little bit more. And if you're our age,
Right.
a little
Young.
bit more than folks younger than us. But I can't imagine my kids, like, we had this conversation, they'd be like, what the hell are you even talking about? Like, what do
Right.
you even mean? I had this
What are
conversation
these
with my,
tapes you speak of in CDs? What are
well,
these?
well, here's the thing. Like, my 13-year-old, we were driving in the car and he saw an older car with a radio antenna, like one of those, like,
Oh yeah.
tall wire ones, that's like the floppy
That
ones
they
that
used to put the
either,
antenna balls on.
yeah, the little, exactly. And he was like, what is that? And I was like, well, son, it's time to take a walk down memory lane.
It
Let your old pops here tell you about how things used to be.
is old pops. That's awesome.
I was like, damn it, I am not that old.
I'm young.
Yeah, I
Oh
really am. I'm
gosh.
young, I tell you.
Yeah, because
But
I bet they
obviously,
don't even really listen to the radio. I mean, I'm guilty of that. I really just listen to Spotify so I can listen to what I want to without commercials.
well, and the only radio that my kids know is like satellite radio. They're like,
Yeah,
what do you mean? What do you mean you put on the radio station and as you drive away from the town, you can't hear it anymore? They're like, the radio always is on. What do you,
I
it
remember
doesn't
having
matter
the
where you are.
old school dials in our Volkswagen and trying to tune it in. Like when
Oh,
you're
yeah.
getting in and out of places,
Hmm.
like, oh, that's my song. Wait.
I know. Well, I had to turn on, I had to flip it to the FM radio to explain it to him.
Right.
And he was like, I was like, you hear that static right there?
Right.
Like, this is the crap we had to deal with every day of our lives.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't, it's like completely unfathomable, but yet here we are. So the PC obviously changed work in every way, shape, and form,
Sure.
right? It automated so many parts of
Yes.
work, and yet we, it still didn't, we haven't even, like, scratched the surface of the level of automation that we're even going to be getting to and seeing now, which is which is, I say funny, but it's almost like, it's almost frightening at the same time, because we're like, wow, that's a lot of, that was a huge, if you think about these four that we picked, I mean, there's other ones like interspersed in between there, but just these four, you think about how things have shifted so dramatically over a period of time. And so
And really a relatively short period of time. I mean, that's
It
the
is.
crazy part, because you're just basically talking 150 years,
Yeah, yeah.
which is
Historically
nuts to think
speaking,
of. Yeah.
it is relatively short, and the speed at which it's accelerating. So,
Yeah.
all right, so that's where we're starting. We're just laying this groundwork, and I know this was probably not as much hilarity in all of our other podcasts, but we are kind of laying the foundation for some future conversations. So the next 3 episodes is what we're going to do is we're going to get into 3 specific areas of where things have shifted and how the impacts are. Specifically, we're going to be talking about how these collisions, or how this current collision is impacting our work.
Yes.
Obviously, that one's pretty. We've kind of set the stage for that one pretty well.
It's top of
We're going to
mind.
we're going to be talking about how this collision is impacting our communities,
Yeah.
society as a whole, our relationships, kind of that kind of side of thinking. Obviously, there's just so much data on smartphones and social media and all of that, and that plays into this. And AI, we're starting to see those types of impacts. And then the third one will be how AI and how this collision is impacting us as individuals, like in our own person. So how is it impacting us mentally, physically, emotionally, kind of all of those things.
Right.
And then we'll close out the series kind of with a forward look about, okay, how do we really survive and thrive, and how do we do things in this new paradigm. So
Exciting.
here we are. Yes.
Yes.
I do honestly miss talking about like syrup and soda and all something completely like mindless.
Right. Cornbread, the good stuff.
Fried chicken, yes, like
Yeah.
all the things. But we
Neighbors
will
with
be
lots
back
of
on
garbage
that.
in their yard.
Yeah, we will be back on that. I mean, I did live across from a lady that had a toilet and a in her front yard, a toilet and a bathtub that she had turned into a
Just in
planter.
case.
They were freaking flowers growing out of the toilet. I'm like,
Because
why?
they
I
were
mean,
they were getting the ultimate fertilizer.
yeah, apparently. But yeah, this is the South right here.
Right.
So I guess there's our little
Right.
view into the
You can
South.
grow flowers out of anything.
Yes, exactly. God. And we would look, and my wife would look at it and go like, why on earth does this woman have a toilet and a bathtub in her front yard full of flowers?
There's a lot of that. And my mom used to always hate when people would take the big tractor trailer tires and put them around trees and then fill those with flowers, because she'd be like, that rubber is just ugly.
Yes.
You're going to do that, just plant the flowers. You don't need that awful tire.
So, well, you got to put it somewhere,
I know, right? I mean, you can't just, recycle that or something. You need to keep it.
All right. Well, we are over our time. So thank you for joining us this week. Yes. And we will talk to you next week.
Bye, y'all.